Hello, hello, and welcome to another Two Network match report. It's finished at the Hawthorns. It's West Bromwich Albion 2, Newcastle United 2. Get in! And what a finish to that game. What a finish. I was hoping we'd get, at least a draw to stop the rot. 4 straight defeats. If it was going to be a 5th against a club without a manager, that are on the wane, that they got a decent point against Tottenham at the weekend, but I was thinking there's got to be something there. But then, well, let's take it from the start. So the Rafa reverted to a 4-2-3-1 after having about, I think it was 3 games of the 4-4-2, all defeats. Hawthorns retained his place, I think, which is sort of unsurprising and surprising at the same time. Murphy and Ritchie retained the places, but the centre of midfield has completely changed. Hayden came back in after suspension, Marino started, Shelvey dropped, and Mbemba came in at left back, as well as Elliott dropping to the bench in favour of Carl Darlow. So there's quite a few changes there, and obviously Rafa Benitez wanted to get. I mean, we talked about, if you saw my Watford match report video, I was talking about Rafa's blanket. Bear with me. So if you watch that video, I explain Rafa's blanket analogy that he likes to use. And I think whereas we were pushing too many men forward with the 4-4-2 and being too exposed at the back, he wanted to shore up, get tighter, be more compact and more difficult to penetrate with a 4-2-3-1. So I think that's why he's gone with a 4-2-3-1 away from home. He's brought in 2 tacklers in the centre of midfield, and Jose Perez also came in for Dwight Gale. So he's sort of going back to what he knew from before, when we were kind of scraping 1-0s and, well, sometimes losing 1-0s as well, but it was a lot tighter. And we seemed to, I mean, the first half was much of a non-event really. There was a couple of chances here and there. Rondon hit the bar from distance, and we looked interested a couple of times. A couple of crosses had gone in. Hawthorns with a flicked on header that just went wide, and another cross that their keeper mixed up, and Higazi had to kind of bring it out. That was kind of bubbling around around just in front of their goal line. But largely, I think it was very much a 0-0 half, and I think we were ready to go in 0-0. And what Rafa likes to do is sort of assess the first half, look for maybe make a few changes at half time, maybe not in personnel but tactically, and then look to kind of penetrate and exploit the weaknesses that he's seen. Now, it was history repeating itself, because cross from the left, again, we conceded 3 goals on Saturday from crosses from the left, Yedlin's side. I'm not necessarily vilifying him, but he has been in the thick of all the goals we've been conceding recently, and even he'll concede that it's not good enough, and he's better than that. He is better than that. And Hal Robson-Kanu, one of the most uninspiring players in the Premier League, loses Kieran Clark. Mbemba tries to do his best to kind of make up for it, and Carl Darlow's not going to save a header from Robson-Kanu from the 6-yard box. And just on the stroke of half time, like we did against Watford, like we did against Man United, conceding just before half time, Rafa was furious. He was throwing his coat, he was probably swearing in Spanish, but he was visibly vexed, and you can see why, because we had been so, they hadn't really been a goal threat, West Brom, going forward. It probably is about as much as we had been. We sort of nullified each other. It was a war of attrition in the first half, yet they got the breakthrough. Now, looking at trends, certainly the last 2 games, so let me see if I remember this. Against Man United, we conceded in the 45th minute, injury time, just before half time. We then came out and we then conceded straight after the break in the 54th minute. Against Watford, we conceded in injury time on the stroke of half time. In the second half, we conceded in the 62nd minute. Tonight, We conceded just before half time and then conceded in the 56th minute. So there's something that happens after conceding a goal before half time that we don't sort of gather ourselves mentally. And so we've conceded, having conceded just before half time in the last 3 games, we've then gone on to concede in the 54th, 56th and 62nd minutes. It's crazy. It's almost like it's written. It's pre-written. It's meditated. It's baffling, and that's got to be a focus thing. It's a mentality thing. It really is, and I don't know if it's the fact that our squad is thin, so people are exhausted and mentally fatigued because there's not enough rotation going on, or we're just going through a bad patch, or we're missing Lascelles, or I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just a dip, but it seems to happen. And this time it was a cross from the right hand side, yet it was Yedlin's side again where the punishment was struck, and it was Fields, who seemed to have a really good game. And you look at the Burnley goal, that was at the back post. Yedlin should have been marking. You look at the Martial goal, the equaliser at Man United. I'm not saying Yedlin should be beating Martial, certainly, but that's where the goal came from. And then it happened again. He went for a head, he missed it completely, and Fields just tucked it away for 2-0. Now that looks dead and buried already. Granted, when Watford scored their goal on about the hour mark, they were 3-0 down and they were out of sight. But 2-0 down, I don't know what it was. Something seemed to change, and Aarons came on for Murphy, I think, first. Then we saw Mitrovic come on, inevitably for Joselu, who had inevitably a very quiet game and didn't look threatening at all, I must say. And Shelvey came on, and Shelvey was afforded a lot of space. He started spraying it about more. Ritchie looked a bit more involved. Yedlin was determined to put it, to make amends, and he started pushing forward. He got a cross wrong. He then, but I mean, it's just the fact that he's a really good overlapping option for Ritchie, and it gives us. But with the penetration that Shelvey and Marino give us with passing, that ball threaded through for, I think, Perez, who was just offside from Shelvey, and he just cut open their defence. He squared it back. I think Hayden put it in, but there was kind of signs since they came on that we were really pushing for it, and we looked dangerous again, and we looked a different side, really. It was quite incredible. And it was a corner swung in from the right hand side, and Clark is just in absolute ache. I mean, that was that's kind of a goal we'd expect to be conceding in our own box. Clark was, I don't know who he was supposed to be getting picked up by, but he ended up being on Neom, I think it was. But by that point, he's already up in the air, and a great header in, and that wasn't too long after the other goal, and it just gave us a lot of belief. And the fans, you could hear them on the TV stream all match, and it was absolutely fantastic. You could just sort of feel a bit of energy and a bit of electricity and belief that we think, come on, these are there for the taking. Their heads were down, and the whole second half was basically us pumping balls into the box and trying to penetrate them and really putting them on the back foot. And we got loads of corners, and the eventual equaliser, again, another ball whipped in from the right hand side, a corner, and a bit of presence from Newcastle player, and it was Rondon, and a mixture of Rondon and Evans. I think it eventually came off Evans for the equaliser at the near post. I mean, the keeper, I don't know how the keeper legislates for that at all, but it was an amazing moment that we finally, the character that we showed from being 2-0 down, having been 3-0 down at the weekend, and had an absolute pasting, and against Man United as well, to be then 2-0 down again. Those players are fighting for Rafa Benitez, and they believe in him, and he must have said something at half. I mean, you could see how vexed he was going into half time, but the fact that we then came back and then looked like winning it at the end, the pressure that we were applying to them absolutely phenomenal, and I think we probably deserved a win in the end, but I'll take the draw. I said before the game, I thought, I'd absolutely take a draw, anything to stop the rot of 4 defeats in a row, possibly a 5th, which we haven't. We're now up to 15 points. Rafa Benitez wants 20 before the year's out. That's his target. So he wants another 5 points between now. So basically we've got the whole of December to get 5 points. That's where he wants to be. And that gets us to January, and that gets us to halfway to safety. So, we're going to be spirited by this performance. The second half performance. Against Watford, I talked about how with a 4-4-2, we were very good in the first halves against Bournemouth and against Man United. But with not taking chances, we then couldn't go on and get anything. Against Watford, with a 4-4-2, well, we neither offered anything going forward, given that we pushed more men forward and had more attacking mindset, and we were exposed at the back. So Watford was, there were no redeeming features from the Watford performance whatsoever. Whereas at least against Man United, it was a spirited first half and we looked dangerous, which sort of vindicated the 4-4-2. Against Bournemouth as well, we had a goal disallowed. We hit the post. We had loads of chances against Bournemouth that we could have, 2-0 up, we'd be flying, we'd have been out of sight. So at least, with that 4-4-2 formation, we were kind of, yes, we were being less cautious and a bit more risky going forward, but we wanted to create more chances because that's been an issue for us. Scoring at all. This is the first time we've scored 2 goals since the Stoke game, I think. Am I right there? I think it's the Stoke game. The last time we scored two goals, and that's incredible. That's ludicrous. And I've got to say that Mitrovic changed the game again. When he came on against Watford for Joselu, he changed the game. He looked hungry. He's got that bite and edge that Joselu maybe just wouldn't, doesn't like to. Too nice, as what I said in the Watford match report, that Joslu's a bit too nice, whereas Mitrovic got a bit about him. He's aggressive and he's hungry. And I just thought he was a really good target man to aim for. The way that he kept that ball in across the far side, where it looked like a lost cause, and he's fighting for his future. And I really think Rafa could do worse than letting him show what he's got. I mean, he's the leeway he's given, the chances he's afforded Joselu, and great, he's a trier, but he's a striker at the end of the day, and he's our only striker if we're playing one up front, and we need goals, and we're struggling for goals. Let's give Mitrovic a go. I know Rafa absolutely hates him, and I think he's probably gone in January. I really do. I cannot see how. But in this situation, I do think Rafa Benitez needs to just change it up. He must have seen, and he will have seen, the difference that Mitrovic made against Watford and against West Brom tonight, and Shelvey as well. I think I know why he went for 2 defensive midfielders. Marino, as much as he's kind of deep line playmaker, he does make interceptions and clearances and tackles. He is defensive. Hayden's defensive. So I can see him wanting to shore back after that 3-0 pumping at the weekend and play 2 defensive midfielders to go cautiously. But when Shelvey came on, maybe the fact that he didn't start meant that they didn't have a game plan against Shelvey. But he seemed to just have so much time on the ball tonight, and he, the way he could pick out passes, and he just brings that extra dimension, and it's a weapon that we can use. Aaron's looked a lot better, I think, coming off the bench, and maybe, Murphy looked. He just kept running into trouble first half. Murphy, he was dribbling. He just lost. I think he made a few poor decisions. I'm not saying write him off, but Aaron's is knocking on the door now. Obviously, Atsu's still injured, but Aaron's is knocking on the door, and maybe Aaron's gets a start. Maybe Aaron's and Mitrovic come in. I don't think Darlow did anything particularly bad in that game. I think the 2 goals were basically scored from the 6-yard box, and there's very little you can do about that. I think that's a defensive issue. I think Benitez has a quandary, because I think he absolutely loves the how dangerous Yedlin is going forward, and I love it. He's probably one of our most dangerous players, quickest players on the wing. But conversely, he's tactically, his defensive abilities are limited. I get the impression that Yedlin was a young winger, but was converted to a right back, and I don't think he has that defensive instinct. Whereas I think he's a very hard worker and a learner, and I think under Rafa he's come on and he's been nurtured tactically, but he's just having a bit of a howler at the minute, and that happens, and that's fine. It doesn't mean we'd write him off and that's his end of his Newcastle career. Far from it. But we have the likes of Mbemba, who I think came in and did a decent job, probably better than Manquillo, I'd say. Mbemba can play right back if he wants to drop Yedlin just for a couple of games, just to get his head right. James is available as well, so we have options if we want to try something a bit different. But I think Rafa likes the penetration that Yedlin provides and his synergy with Richie on that right hand side. So I think there's plenty of positives to take from that. Yeah, a win would have been amazing, and crazily we'd all would have been really, really shocked had we got the 3 points there. But a draw is absolutely fantastic, especially under those circumstances. And you think about West Brom now. We go on Twitter now and see all the West Brom fans. They'll be devastated with that, being 2-0 up and then losing it, absolutely losing it. Coasting. It's a bit like Liverpool, Sevilla a couple of weeks ago. It's a bit like Borussia Dortmund, Schalke. Mentally weak, allowed their opponents to come back into the game, and we were just. I think it was a mixture of them being mentally weak and us just having the desire and fight, and we're fighting for survival. Rafa was in no uncertain terms why we're here and how we got there in his press conference this week, and he's right. And many people say, well, he's not going to instill confidence into the side, slagging them off and saying Oslu's only worth 5 million, so he's not very good because a proper striker is worth at least 15 million upwards. For me, it's important what he says to the players, face to face, one on one, in person. Sound bites in a press conference, that matters little to me. It's what he says to Hoslu on a daily basis, how he instills confidence in them on the training ground and otherwise, and before matches and after matches and during matches. That's what counts. It's not what he says in the press conference. What he was saying in the press conference, he was attacking Mike Ashley because he's trying to, quite rightly, let everyone know where your anger should be aimed at. It's not Rafa Benitez. He might have made a few cosmetic mistakes in terms of like maybe player selection or subs here and there, or not putting a sub on a bit sooner. Small things, minor factors, really, on the big scale of things. But the big scale of things is a squad that is the fifth lowest squad value in the entire Premier League. So based on squad value, for argument's sake, I appreciate that's not how football works, but based on squad value, we'd be 16th in the table. Whereas now, currently, I think we're up to about 12th. We're up to 12th at the minute, level on points with Huddersfield, but they've got a game in hand, and 1 point behind Southampton. So it's looking a bit rosier. It's given us another point just to get, that we can dine out on for another week or so. It just keeps our head above water. We've got West Ham and Swansea to play on 10 points and 9 points respectively. So as it stands, we're 5 points clear of the drop zone, but obviously this is all going to change after the Wednesday night fixtures. But let's just get back to Rafa Benitez, and if there's one man who's tactically astute, there's one man who learns from mistakes and knows how to fix them, or at least there's some method behind what he's trying if he tries something different. There's method behind the 4-4-2 because he felt we weren't scoring enough and that was costing us, so he wanted us to push forward a bit more, and we did create more chances against Bournemouth and Man United. So in that respect it did work, but the results didn't necessarily go our way. But there's still method behind that. And the Watford game, I think we've learned a lot there. There's some similar mistakes popping up, which probably not enough time between Watford and West Brom to kind of rectify that. But damn right, you know what Rafa Benitez is going to be working on the training ground this week. He's going to be working on Yedlin. He's going to be working on Clark. You know, if Lascelles isn't going to be back still, he's going to be working on that back four. He's going to be working on keeping our defence compact again, getting back that defensive discipline that served us really well in a couple of months ago when we were picking up results only by a goal here and there, but some of them were victories and some of them were draws. So, sorry, not draws. We either seem to lose or draw, lose or win usually. So yeah, so we were, the games were on a knife edge, whereas the last two games haven't been on a knife edge at all. So we've got a point. I think mentally that's absolutely huge. I think it'll be so much more to us than it will to West Brom, and hopefully their punishment for scoring 2 against us will be the appointment of Alan Pardew, which I'm really looking forward to, because he's terrible. But we play away to Chelsea at the weekend. That's not going to be an easy game. I'd argue that it's almost written off as a defeat already. However, we'll have belief from this away performance. And last season, Rafa was fantastic on the road. We've beaten Swansea away this season as well. So obviously there's a big gulf between Swansea and Chelsea, but we've seen teams like Watford, they ended up losing at Chelsea, but teams like Watford really take a game to Chelsea. So there's potential there. We saw, the Liverpool goal against Chelsea was full of defensive errors. So, we're likely going to lose against Chelsea, but anything can happen. And with some instilled belief and a couple of personnel changes, who knows? I'm really looking forward to that game. I'm going to be in London for it, but sadly not going to the game, but I'll be in amongst it, probably in a pub full of Chelsea fans. So we'll see how that goes. If I'm not back for a match report after that, I didn't survive. But you have this YouTube channel as my legacy. Anyway, I'm having to whisper a bit because my family are in bed. But thanks very much for watching, and if you've been listening as well. Really appreciate your comments on the Watford video. If you haven't watched that, please have a look at it and see where I thought things went wrong at the weekend. But things definitely went slightly less wrong tonight, and I think second half, brilliant. Probably one of the best away halves that we've had there of the season, in terms of how much we dominated, the chances we created, and that we've really looked like taking all 3 points at one point. But I'm delighted. A draw, we've stopped the rot. So important. I think that's huge. Thanks very much. I've been Adam. This has been a Toon Network Match Report, as ever. Get your comments in. Subscribe on YouTube. We're on iTunes. We're on SoundCloud. Follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook as well. There's all my social plugs. Thanks very much, everyone. I've been Adam. Bye-bye.